All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to today's explainer. We're diving straight into Brushstroke 4, crafting lyrics that connect. We're going to look at exactly how to take that core message you've got and transform it into an actual song without getting absolutely paralyzed staring at a blank page. If lyric writing usually feels like this overwhelming mountain to climb, well, this explainer is going to be a real game changer for you.
Here's the roadmap for today. We've got 5 main stops. First, the song's emotional journey. Second, the blueprint of a song. Third, write like people actually talk. Fourth, show emotions, don't explain them. And finally, number 5, refining with AI partners.
Okay, section 1, the song's emotional journey. Now, to write truly great lyrics, we've kind of got to flip our mindset, right? Let go of trying to write this incredibly complex, impressive poetry. Instead, think of yourself as a storyteller who's literally taking the listener on a trip. And to map that trip out, we start with a massive anchor question. Where is the listener emotionally at the beginning, and where do you want them to arrive by the end? Every single memorable song takes us somewhere. It's like defining the absolute before and after of your track. Say your song is about trusting God. Maybe it kicks off in total fear and uncertainty, but by the end, it lands solidly at peace. That right there is a clearly defined journey. And that brings us to this idea. Everything in between is simply the path. Once you nail down that destination, the actual writing, it gets so much easier. The lyrics are basically just the vehicle guiding your listener from emotion A to emotion B. You're not just throwing words at the wall anymore. Every single word you write is actively paving the road toward that final emotional payoff. Which leads us to section 2, the blueprint of a song. Now, I know a lot of newer writers push back on structure. They think it's going to box in their creativity. But here's the thing. Traditional song structure isn't some rigid set of rules you're forced to follow. They're purposeful milestones on your listener's journey. Let's walk through this blueprint really quick. First step, the verse. This introduces the story, right? It gives us the context. Next, the pre-chorus. This is where you build the anticipation. The emotion is really starting to bubble up. Then, boom, we hit the chorus, the absolute beating heart of your message. After that, we usually see a bridge, which throws in a totally fresh perspective or a turning point. And finally, the outro, leaving the listener with one lingering final thought. Let's zoom in on the most critical piece here, the chorus. Like we just said, this is the heart of the song, where the central hook returns to remind listeners exactly why they're here. And here is a crucial takeaway. Do not be afraid to repeat your main ideas. I know there's this myth out there that repeating words makes you an uncreative writer, but we literally need to dismantle that right now. Repetition builds comfort, and comfort breeds connection. It completely anchors your listener in the moment. All right, moving on to section 3. Write like people actually talk. So, we have our journey, we have our milestones, but what kind of language are we actually using to get there? Look at forced poetry versus honest conversation. Real people rarely walk around speaking in elaborate, overly dramatic poetry, right? We speak in simple, honest truths. And the crazy thing is, simple words almost always carry the most extraordinary emotion. If you're out there forcing rhymes or using this incredibly unnatural vocabulary just to sound impressive, your listener's gonna tune out. But honest conversation, that grabs them by the shirt collar and pulls them right into your experience. So here's a super practical tip you can use literally today. Read every single lyric aloud. Actually, better yet, sing it softly to yourself. If a sentence feels awkward or forced when you're just speaking it in an empty room, I absolutely guarantee it'll sound incredibly awkward sung over a track. If you stumble over the words, your listener is going to stumble too. If it feels forced, you gotta rewrite it until it flows like you're just naturally talking to a friend. And that flows perfectly into section 4, show emotions, don't explain them. See, you want your audience to actually experience this journey with you, not just sit through a lecture about how you felt. Look at the difference here. Explaining is just stating, I was afraid. Okay, cool. It's dry. It's basically a status report. But showing, that's describing what that fear physically looked and felt like. When you describe a tight chest, or maybe a super specific quiet moment when peace finally washed over you, that creates a vivid, lasting memory in the listener's mind, because people remember experiences, they don't remember lectures. Finally, we're at section 5, refining with AI partners. This is the final stretch where we pave the road for absolute clarity. We're totally shifting gears here.
You're stepping out of that free-flowing creator mode and stepping directly into an objective editing mindset. Why? Because the first draft introduces the song, but revision actually reveals it. Which brings us to this brutal but necessary rule: every line must earn its place. You have to look at your lyrics and ask, is this actively moving the song forward? If it's not, even if it's literally your absolute favorite, most clever lyric you've ever written, you have to be willing to let it go for the sake of the song's overall clarity.
And this is where AI can be a massive asset for you, but only if you use it right. We're talking about using AI strictly as a conversational thinking partner, not a ghostwriter. You drop your lyrics in and ask it really specific things. Does this verse actually support the chorus? Is this section getting too conversational? Can I make this sentence simpler? Does the overall emotional journey even make sense? Where might a listener get confused? You are the producer here. You're directing the whole process. The AI is simply acting as an objective sounding board to help you refine your own story and make sure your message is crystal clear.
Which leads us to the ultimate filter for any track you write, and really, the final provocative thought I want to leave you with in this explainer. Will someone remember how this song made them feel? Because at the end of the day, a listener might forget your exact rhyme scheme, they might completely forget the tempo, but they will never, ever forget the emotion you made them experience. So use these tools, trust your own unique story, and build that emotional journey step by step. You've got the framework now to craft lyrics that actually connect. Go write your masterpiece. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.